Welcome to Rock the Crown. Introducing our host, Nafisa, queen about her business 360. Host Naima, queen get it done and fitness guru. Host Nefertari, queen residential redeveloper and creative director. Host Daia, boss queen biz and youth motivator. All right, Crown Nation, let's get it. Season 2, Rock the Crown.
Hello, everyone. This is Rock the Crown. I'm Nafisa, your host for today's show. But I'm not doing this by myself. I have my co-hosts along.
I'm Naima.
I'm Nefertari.
And I'm Daia.
Yes, and we are excited to have you and for you to honor us with your presence today. We have a juicy topic today. It's great. It's called community building. For real?
What?
That's our topic. Yes, community building for real. You know, there's a lot of things going on in the news. I'm not sure if many of you heard about the community of African Americans in Atlanta that bought about almost 100 acres, and they plan to build a big community down in South Georgia. There are numerous other people who are gathering together and starting to buy large plots of land. There are people that are really trying to focus on building community, whether you're talking about the actual physical structures or you're talking about building communities on Facebook, right? There's always somebody talking about building a community on Facebook. So what we want to talk about today is community building for real. And the aspects that we want to focus on are, we want to talk about the physical aspects in terms of master plan communities with homes, with businesses, the whole live, work, play. We want to talk about developing that for our community. We also want to talk about today the philosophies behind what drives your vision for community building. We want to talk about that today as well. And we got to talk about the cultural aspects, right? The celebrations that's involved in building community, the well-being of the members of that community, and how do you contribute to make sure that everybody's needs within that community is being met. Now, of course, we can have whole seminars on all these topics, but we just want to highlight some of these and give you all a little taste as we discuss community building for real. Now, to kick this off, we want to have our co-host Naima talk to us about the history and philosophy and vision of community building.
Yes. So we want to talk about the philosophy of community building because every community has a philosophy. So as I was discussing earlier with some of my friends, we were talking about the United States of America, right? United States was built on a philosophy that was centered around religion. And as the religion and the philosophies began to grow and change and more people came into America, those changes began to happen. And so then you saw a lot of different sects of not only people of various different shades of colors, but then the religions began to change in America. And although America was predicated on a Christian philosophy, it began to kind of turn the tables because other people who were not necessarily subscribing to that began to come into this country. And then everything started to shift in terms of like, okay, well, what we used to think, we have to be able to kind of freedom for all. liberty and justice and all of that stuff. But
Mhm.
behind the scenes, they were still trying to prevent specific groups of people, races of people from moving forward because God forbid they actually go against the philosophy of what America, the premise of what America was built on. So when we talk about making America great, that's what people are trying to hold on to, a specific philosophy that they don't want other people to move away from. And so what we have here in America is we have a bit of dissension when people don't agree with one another. It kind of, people gets people in an uproar. But when we also think about America religiously, it being a Christian nation, when other religions come in, then you have this philosophy of, if you're not a Christian, then can you really be an American? And the answer is yes, because all of these various religions, when people came to America, we have to represent the Indigenous Day that we just celebrated. Happy Indigenous Day. Because when people came to America, they came to a land that was already established by a group of people that had their own philosophy, their own culture, their own economics, their own business enterprises. And although it didn't look like what the people who came here looked like, but it still was established. And so what happened is people came to America and they began to ruffle the feathers of the people who were here. And they were like, okay, you know what? We're going to begin to push out our ideas and or concept. Then you start thinking about religiously. So we as a community, I am from, you know, Las Cruces, New Mexico, grew up in Texas, lived in Atlanta for over 15 years. And I am a Muslim. So I am a Muslim American. And when I was younger, came through the Bilalian American Muslim Mission with Imam W.D. Muhammad. And even his philosophy, it derived from how he was raised. So when we start thinking about philosophy and how people are raised and what builds communities, people come together because they believe in the same type of ideas and theologies. And
Mhm.
although people want to say, oh, we can all exist as one, we can, but we exist more in terms of humanity than we do necessarily agreeing that my religion is exactly like your religion. That's not necessarily so, but there are premises in which everyone can coexist. And that's what we have right now. When we talk about community building, that's what we're looking for, things that can coexist across all expansions of human beings through not just their ideology, but also through theology. And how can we build upon that? We can build upon that through philosophies that and ideas and concepts that Nefertari is going to share and talk about. Nef, what do you have for us?
Well, as a community, what we do is we're coming together to advocate and support one another. And in doing this, we want to do it to be able to overcome whatever obstacles are there and whatever is beneficial for the community at large. And so a lot of people in the community, they want to feel a sense of belonging. And so we want to lean on each other through tough times, have our family and our friends and our neighbors there for us when we need support and encouragement. And so we share a common interest in the background, and so we want a sense of feeling connected and a responsibility of the life skills in general, having emotional and physical well-being and academic success, with career planning. So these different channels and different things that we have within the community, when we look at social justice and engaging the citizens within the community to just find a sense of belonging. So when we think about community development, it's like a process where they can come together and talk about putting things together collectively to generate solutions to different problems and common interests. So that's when we kind of looked at some of those things when we talk about economics, religion, things from a spiritual point of view. For me, I think about it in the context of like the four birds, so to speak. And then in the community as well, we can think about like, there's always going to be different sects in the community, different levels of people, like, homelessness for one, or you may have people who may live in a certain area where homes are, decapitated, and if I said that word right, that's one of the tough words for me. But areas and neighborhoods that are not so well, to live in. And then you have that medium, income bracket where the housing is okay, and then you kind of get over into the wealthy and the wealthier side. And so, being able to come together, so those who are doing extremely well, being able to give back, because to whom much is given, much is expected. And so being able to give back to the community and coming up with different plans and formats. So like I said, looking at homelessness or neighborhood stabilization projects, looking at family life, which I know that Daya is going to kind of go into some of the aspects of socialization with people. So one of the things that kind of comes to my mind is like domestic violence, even, within the community, having projects for that, or just cultural development programs. It's just such a wide variety of things that we as a community need to come together. And we do come together to be able to satisfy the need of humanity, pretty much. So now, one of the things I think about, of course, for us in our community is, we have the masjid, we have our school, and, one of our visions, I know you spoke about our history and where we come from, but even with Imam Muhammad and his vision of our neighborhoods and our communities of us living and working and being able to provide for one another, everything, whatever it is, whether it's your hospitals, your banks, your schools, all of that. And so that's something that is like near dear to me. Is just being able to see our community develop to a point where, our schools are not struggling, our masjid is flourishing, our neighborhoods are coming up, housing development is coming up, we have senior living for our elders. And so, there's just there's so much there. Daya, you want to go into a little bit on the social aspect of it?
Sure. Thank you, Neff.
You're
One of the things that I just absolutely love about our community, and speaking about the Atlanta Muslim community, is I love the environment. So, we have, and when I say the community, I'm speaking about the community where all of us, are not from, but where we, consider ourselves a part of, would be the Atlanta Masjid community. So this is a community indicator, and the way that it is planned out, and mapped out, you have the masjid, which is the religious institution, and then down the street you have the school. And then you have several community members who live around this area, live in the Decatur, the East Atlanta area. We have a restaurant, we have also a halal meat market. So this right here, and I just have to mention this because this is not something that just happened. We didn't just kind of just come up and all these things just happen. We just happen to have a school, or happen to have a masjid, happen to have a restaurant. These are things that were planned out. And I think that, it has been established by our elders who came before us. So they established this. And I think that with proper planning, from our generation, we could possibly see this even grow and expand. Grow and expand to where now not only do we have a school, K through 12, we also now have some type of university. We have a university where we can educate our people. Institutions, educational institutions actually are a wonderful source of prosperity. They actually make money if they're done the right way. So, we can kind of start to see ourselves expanding in that way, creating more homes, for the families, to live in, buying more property so that we are, creating this, what the families that Nafisa mentioned about who are buying properties, down South Georgia, we have the opportunity actually to create something right here, closer to Atlanta, where it's going to be much more valuable, right? So we have a really, really great opportunity to do something, that can be, really, really great. But there again, I have to mention again that it takes planning, generational planning. A lot of times when we think about a plan, sometimes our plans don't go further than 3 years, 5 years, right? 10 years at the most. You know, I just recently became a grandmother. So I'm starting now to think actually 20 years down the road when my grandchildren graduate. So as we become older, we start to see life in a different way. You know, we have to start thinking about generational planning, planning for our grandchildren, inshallah, you know, God willing, planning for our great grandchildren. You know, what do we want this world to look like, you know, when they, you know, are adults. So, you know, we have to really start now in creating these spaces, you know, creating these cultural aspects of our life, of our community life, so that when they get older, they can continue these traditions, you know, and these traditions can be healthy traditions, you know, that they can pass down to, you know, just to create a greater, create greater people, I'll say, you know, our ancestors, you know, and I'm gonna go on the tangent just a little bit. I probably speak the less out of the group. So I think I'm okay with just give me 2 minutes, ladies, 2 minutes.
Okay.
So, you know, our ancestors were great, are great people, you know, and their offspring, we're their offspring, we're also great people. And it's time for us to start really living up to that. And many of us are, you know, we are all doing great things. I'm so proud of my girls here, and I'm proud of the, you know, our Crown Nation. You know, many of us are doing really, really great things. We could do even greater things collectively if we come together, you know, come together as a community and do things, you know, as a community to unite, you know, and to strengthen, you know, what we have and build on what we have. So Nafisa, I'm gonna circle it back around to you, so you can talk a little bit about the money, about the economics, you know, and how we can flourish in that area. Right?
Yes, thank you so much for that. I just really appreciate it. And community building and this idea, this concept, this um, force is something that's really deep to me. I've always been committed to it to some aspect, but I myself need to elevate my commitment to it. And I think as a community, we need to elevate our vision of how to get it done, right? Because we've been talking about it for a long time, but we need to elevate our vision on how to get it done, and particularly from an economic standpoint. And what I thought about as you were talking, Daia, is India Irie has this song. It's called Back to the Middle, right? And it's one of my favorite songs because it's what happens a lot of times when you have a shift, right? So when you were talking about the ancestors and the fact that we were, as a people, denied the opportunity to even have community, right? Our idea of community was very controlled by the slave owners. So who we had in community, our whole community, our family, all that was very controlled. So that was one extreme, right? And then when we got our freedom, right? We decided as a people, oh, okay, so now we're gonna set up our own community. We're gonna go ahead and take this land or buy this land, invest in this land. We're gonna build our own community since the outer community, in other words, the Caucasian, still rejects us. We're gonna set up our own community. That's why you had physical communities like Rosewood, like Tulsa, Oklahoma, coming up, because where people not only lived in these communities, economically, the banks were in this community, you had attorneys, CPAs, every service to serve that community from an economic standpoint, we had. When people went to work and they had money, they put their money in the community bank, which was a Black-owned bank. They got insurance through a Black-owned insurance company. So everything from an economic standpoint, we had it and it was ours. Then we opened up integration, right? And what happens with integration? We always think the grass is greener on the other side. So everything we want to go and integrate, we want to be with everybody or whatever. I'm not saying nothing's wrong with that, but we went to the extreme with it, to the detriment of leaving our own stuff behind or not rebuilding once it had been destroyed, right? So now I feel like we're in this a shift going on in society where we're coming back to the middle. We're taking the advantages that we kind of gain by being integrated, and we're saying now this is a great time for us to come back to the middle of building our own. That's why you see now people buying acres and want to do homestead. I'm talking about Black people, right? Trying to buy acres and acres of land, coming together. I read the other day about a woman who was searching for a home to purchase. She couldn't find one that necessarily met her specifications, so she decided to build a subdivision on her own. So we're starting to do these things, and I think we need to come back to those models of Rosewood, of even here in Atlanta and Tulsa. We need to come back to those models and start to really identify where we can actually institute and build those models for real.
Right.
Everybody is building these live work communities, and I'm not going to go all into it because we're going to have a whole session where we interview people that's actually buying land and that whole bit. But I do just want to give you a taste, a taste, and say that we need to elevate our idea and our work, because it takes work,
Right.
our work on buying land and master planning communities, because other people are
Yes.
doing it.
Right.
We just need to do it
Right.
and stop waiting on others. And I think that's where you come back, what I say, we come back to the middle of taking the best that integration has afforded us in terms of developing certain skills. And now we can bring back and come to our philosophies of developing our own communities. Doesn't mean we still won't take advantage of stuff that's integrated, but we were going to build our own smaller communities and be able to control and to put forth our good that we want to exhibit in the world. So that's kind of what we mean by community building for real. And I just want to encourage you, Crown Nation, those in Crown Nation, because our listeners are on it. Our listeners are elevating. Our listeners are about that work and about elevating the concept of what we're trying to accomplish for future generations. And so we want you to get on board with this community building for real, and send us in the comments. Send us your ideas or different stories that you've heard, or ideas about community building, different aspects, whether it's about starting a credit union, right? Starting a we have several Black owned construction companies, right? So building a coalition to bring those different groups together, right? We have several doctors who own offices. Why not have them own an office in the community that we design? So we have these different aspects. It's just that they're spread out, and we need to really come together and build them into a model community, and we can do it. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in our next session. So we want to close out, but before we close out, I do want to give my co-host an opportunity to have any lasting comments or that you want to say to our listeners in Crown Nation before we sign off.
I had one last thing, if I could.
Yes.
This goes back to what everything that you spoke about, and really everyone spoke about, goes back to philosophy. And remembering that when people are coming together, it's because they agree on an idea and or concepts. And just as African American people, because we have grown in America, been given so many different ideologies, we still have to agree on togetherness. I hope that as the world is shifting, that we can find more love in our heart for one another, more love in our heart to know that we are still a united community, even despite the division that we've had to live and endure for centuries, right? And that we win when we come together. And not that everyone is going to come together on 100%, but even if we come together in pockets of communities all across this nation, we will win. And so just thinking about that and hoping that, let's continue to invest in ourselves. Let's continue to spend our dollars with ourselves. Let's continue to love ourselves. And I think that in the end, we will win, we will win, we will win.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
You said it. That's it.
Right, exactly. So I'm excited. I'm excited about the present. I'm excited about the future. And for all of those who are interested in sharing resources, reach out to us. Reach out to us on YouTube. Reach out to us on Facebook. We're on Instagram as well. And not only that, you can reach out to us as business owners, reach out to us as community leaders, because all of us are involved in community on so many different levels. But reach out to us because we want to make sure that we are aware of all the resources that are out there for us to take advantage of in terms of building community and being self-determined and becoming self-sufficient. If not for our generation, that we set the next generation up to pass the daggone torch.
That's right.
That's what we're about. And we're sounding off and signing off, Crown Nation. Thank you so much. And please make sure that you like us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that we can continue to bring you content that matters to you.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Crown Nation.
Thanks, everybody. Peace out, Crown Nation.